I don't think that when you're doing analysis, I don't think that you can compartmentalize when you do analysis. You know, you can't actually separate history and culture and beliefs and origins and philosophy and so forth when you analyze. You know, when you analyze, for example, current affairs, politics, geopolitics, economic trends, and so forth. You know, when you're forecasting, when you're trying to look at probabilities of how things might go and whatnot. This is a serious mistake if you compartmentalize like that, because you have to understand who you're dealing with. You know, you have to understand the character and the quality of the actors who are involved in any issue, in any events. Their behavior is defined and is delineated according to what you can call their sort of collective identities. And that's the combined totality of their history, of their backstory, their cultural DNA, their beliefs and their worldview, and their priorities and their values, and all the characteristics and all the experiences that determine what those values and those priorities are. You have to know their national psyche, their civilizational psyche, their civilizational mentality. You have to know this about a people. You have to know this about a nation and about individuals who are raised in that society, who are raised in that culture. So even their own analyses, for example, even their own analyses are going to be influenced by their civilizational psyche and the way they read events, the way they explain things, the way they interpret information, the way they present information, the way they analyze data and so forth. All of that is going to be influenced by who they are as a people. And you have to know that, and you have to understand that when you see what they're saying and what they're doing. Do you understand? And one of the things that they do is to pretend that none of this impacts their approach. They pretend. They pretend that their reading of events and their interpretation and their presentation of information is completely compartmentalized, is completely separate from their national psyche, from their cultural mentality. But of course it isn't. It's not separate at all. What they choose to talk about and how they choose to talk about it, and how they interpret things and how they understand things, and of course how they, as I say, present things, all of this is influenced. It's influenced, if not completely determined, by their cultural or civilizational mentality. And that's true of everyone. That's true of everyone. I'm not just singling out the West for this. Everyone does this. But where the West is unique, where they do need to be singled out, is with regards to the peculiarity of their particular psyche, their particular origins and their history and their culture, their peculiar civilizational mentality. And you have to understand this. You must understand this. You have to understand this if you're a non-Westerner, and you should try to come to terms with this if you are a Westerner, because it's very strange. It's very strange. It's very strange and dysfunctional. And it is very, very different from the cultural psyches of almost any other people in the world. Certainly it's drastically different from the collective mentality of the Muslims, but also from the Chinese and from, you know, like I say, essentially every other culture, every other nation in Asia, in Africa, and so on. And they'll claim this about themselves, you know, how unique and how special they are, how distinct their collective psyche is, their civilizational mentality. They'll claim this about themselves. They'll boast about it when they think that they can frame it in a positive light. Oh, they have no problem whatsoever with acknowledging or with claiming how different they are from the rest of the people in the world when, as I say, they can present that difference as what they would call superiority. Which means when they get to dictate the adjectives themselves, you understand? When they get to define their qualities as unique instead of just as strange. But no, they are strange. That's what they are. They're strange, and you have to understand this. I mean, you could actually go on and on and on about how peculiar their mentality actually is. The truth of the matter is the West, the Europeans, are by far the most animalistic people on earth, truly. The Europeans and their American children. You need to know this. Like I said, everyone outside the West needs to know this, needs to understand this. And Westerners themselves need to know this about themselves. And they actually need to face this fact. They are the most animalistic people in the world. You know how animals in the wild, especially predators, predatory animals, If one of their pack gets wounded or gets old or gets sick, what do? Well, they leave it to die, don't they? If you can't hunt, you're useless to the pack. No one's going to carry you. Well, who does that sound like? They literally used to throw old people off a cliff when they got too old in Europe. Now they just throw them into nursing homes or sedate them or what have you. Or else they literally will just let them lose everything and die homeless in the street. They don't care. Nobody cares. And the moment you're old enough to hunt, okay, predatory animals, with predatory animals, the moment you're old enough to hunt, you're on your own. Go make your own pack. No one's going to take care of you. Well, in the West, they can't wait to get their kids out the house. You're 18, why are you still under my roof, right? That's their thinking. That's animalistic. And this runs through their whole society. It runs through their whole culture. Their economy is a hunting economy. It's a predatory economy. Acquire resources, seize the prey, take, get yours, don't worry about anyone else. That's their thinking. Very territorial as well. Very controlling. Always competing. Always fighting. Always trying to obtain dominance. Always laying claim. Laying claim to this and that and the other. Claiming their dominion. The United States of America has spread its scent like a predatory animal all the way down to the tip of Chile and Argentina. It's so animalistic, in fact, that they came up with a so-called scientific theory that asserts the idea that human beings are nothing but animals, and that teaches the idea that we can learn about human behavior by studying chimpanzees, by studying gorillas, by studying wolves, and so forth. I mean, once you recognize this about them, you can see it, like I say, running through every aspect of their whole so-called civilization. It's a fundamental, foundational belief that human beings are innately bestial and predatory and selfish and alone. They're coming from a very deep place of contempt for mankind. You're not going to be able to properly analyze anything that involves Westerners if you don't understand this about their collective psyche, about their cultural background, about their framework, about their paradigms. And furthermore, you're not going to be able to properly evaluate any Westerner's analysis of anything if you don't understand this about them. And part of understanding this, part of understanding the ramifications of this, is also to understand that it means that for them, everything that constitutes being advanced, everything that constitutes being civilized, being superior, means being further and further removed from nature, from being natural, from being human. For them, it means building methods, building mechanisms, and building systems that, quote unquote, solve what they see as the inherent crudeness and bestial nature of human beings. Which, of course, necessarily means that everything that they build is completely artificial and inorganic and fake. It's always just a show. For them, civilization is something that you build around you, not something that you build from what is within you, which is what other genuine civilizations do. I mean, the best example of this, of course, is the Muslims. We literally don't even exist as a people, as a nation, as a civilization without Islam. Otherwise, we're just Arabs or Africans or, Pathan or Malay or Persian and so forth. We're just ethnicities otherwise, a collection of ethnicities. Our whole civilization is based upon belief, upon deen, upon Islam, upon Quran, upon revelation. Our civilization is the product of the faith within our hearts. It grew out of what we have within us. Our origin story is the origin story of Islam itself. And of course, in Islam, we have a completely different view of the human race. We have a completely different view of human nature. And we have a completely different view of the purpose of life. But to be fair, basically every other civilization grew out of what they had within themselves. Every other civilization did that. What they built was an extension, not an artifice. It was organic. You understand? The trappings of civilization weren't just a camouflage to cover over the actual lack of internal development, moral development, maturity, wisdom, and so forth, which is the case with the West. That's what their so-called civilization is. Nothing but camouflage. Now, I've talked about this many, many times already, and I don't mean to rehash it all again here. But the fundamentally primitive nature of the West is simply not open for debate. That's not up to debate at all. The fact that their so-called civilization is just an elaborate cover-up of their primitivity is not open to debate. You don't go all around the world and rape and pillage and mass murder and steal and enslave and exploit and impoverish, destroy, loot, cheat, lie, oppress people, and leave every land worse off by you having been there, and leave every people worse off by their interactions with you, if you are an advanced and civilized people. You spread like a contagion on the earth, and that's a fact. Every place that you've been, and every people who ever encountered you, suffered because of you. And if you deny that, and of course you do deny that, but if you deny that, that's just symptomatic of the very same primitivity and lack of moral development, and the very same, as I say, contempt for humanity that allowed you to commit all your crimes in the first place. You negate the voices and the testimony of the victims the same way that you negated their humanity when you victimized them. You don't think that their cries should be heard. You didn't think that their cries should be heard when you oppressed them, and you don't think that their stories about your oppression should be heard now, because you never have changed. You never have developed. You're the same criminals today that you were then. And nothing makes that more obvious than your continued denial and your continued lack of accountability. It's an insult to the intelligence of the whole planet. I'm telling you, it's an insult to the intelligence of civilized people to even pretend that it's debatable that the West has been a pestilence upon the earth. No one needs to entertain that atrocious farce any longer. It's a vicious assault on human decency to not call Western so-called civilization exactly what it has been, which is a reign of terror.
All right, now, let me tell you what normally happens. What normally happens is that the white America, how they explain things, how they interpret things, they always do it in such a manner that it will favor the system or it will favor themselves. So they've always done things in a manner that when you look at it, or rather when you, let me say, you try to maybe read it, you know, it's going to direct you to a point where you are going to finally find out you're supporting them, or rather you are working things out on their behalf. They've always wanted to be the best. They've always wanted to maintain a certain movement, a certain character, a certain behavior where every single person thinks about them. It doesn't matter who you are. They want to be at a point where they are always right, whether they are right or wrong. A wrong to them is right. A right to them is right. You see, what you see, you feel like they did and it's wrong. To them, it's right. So whatever is wrong when they do it, and you come to realize whatever this people did was wrong, to them, it's a right. Okay? And that is what white America has always been doing. So what they do, they would even lie to make you believe in something. They will try and bring or make things that do not exist look existing, yet they don't exist. And that has always been the character of the white America. And therefore, Shahid BOLSEN is breaking this down for us. You see, let's take a look at Shahid BOLSEN. He's trying to explain something here very fundamental, you know, and you're going to understand everything clearly when you listen to him. So let's take a look at him. I'm going to ask you to subscribe this channel if you're watching me for the first time. For the returning subscribers, I really do appreciate your presence being here right now. You know, as you're watching this video, prepare your thoughts. Have them shared with me on the comment section. I will do my best to make sure I read all of them and give a response where possible. But until then, let's take a look at the video.
Nothing but a reign of terror. It's been a very dark and very strange and very savage chapter in human history, and that's the truth. So you have to comprehend this. You have to be aware of this. You have a very primitive culture. It's a very primitive animalistic psyche. And you have a contemptuous view about humanity and about human nature. You think that advancement in civilization means moving away from being human, from being natural. You think that the artificial is superior to the organic. Civilization for you is just scaffolding. It's procedural architecture. It's moralistic fakery, sleight of hand, trickery, And if you interrogate it with any degree of intensity, you'll see that. There's no way you can't see it. The language they use makes you think that complex thought is going on. But if you look and you listen just a little bit more carefully, you'll see that you're dealing with a people who are absolutely imposters. They're absolute imposters, intellectual imposters, moral imposters, frauds. They're absolute bumpkins pretending to be deep thinkers, honestly. And if you make the mistake of believing that the West is somehow intellectually superior, and then you end up learning from them, so-called, and adopting their approaches, you're literally just doing damage. You're just damaging your own intellect. Like, I'll give you an example. I get questions in the comment section, and I get questions and comments sometimes on the Telegram discussion channel. Questions to the effect of what economic model does Middle Nation advocate? Or what political model, what governance model, and what have you. I'll either be asked this directly, as in, Brother Shahid, what political or economic model do you advocate? Or they'll say, what does Middle Nation advocate? Or what model does Islam advocate? And so forth. Okay, this sounds intelligent, right? But this is intelligent only in the Western conception, in the Western framework. Because they think that creating labels and creating ideologies and creating systems and boxes to put things in, compartmentalization and so forth, they think that that is intelligent. You understand? They think that that is civilization. Because, you see, as I said, it's unnatural and inorganic. You have to make a box and then force fit people into that box. They think nature is chaos and civilization is organized. This is the foundation of their paradigm. But of course, you can't actually do that. You can't force your model onto people, and you can't force people into your model. So it's all just for show. So the question that they're really asking me is, what imaginary model do you pretend to believe in and pretend works better than any other model, but which no one will ever actually adapt to? You understand? So the real question that they're asking me is, what type of camouflage do you wear? What intellectual construct are you going to use to disguise your primitivity to make you look civilized? That's the real question here, because that's their approach. That's the Western approach. Because the truth is, there is no model. There are morals. And how those morals will be systematized in any given society will, of course, vary according to their particular circumstances and conditions. And it has to be flexible. It has to be adaptable across time and across locations. But when you think that human beings are not inherently moral, noble beings, when you think that morality is an invention, not nature, you're not comfortable with the reliability of human nature, of human morality. So you think that you need to come up with some sort of inflexible model that you can pretend to force on whole nations, like capitalism, like Marxism, communism, what have you, or democracy, or parliamentarianism, or whatever the case may be. You come up with your models. Meanwhile, no country that claims to adhere to any of these models actually do adhere to them. They just pretend. Like I've said before, okay, I'm Muslim, I'm guided by Islam. But there is no Islamic model in terms of government or economy. There are morals in Islam. There are rules in Islam. And the Muslims have organized around those rules and around those morals, and they have structured governance, and they have managed their economies in multiple ways over the centuries and across vast territories in this world. We don't need a model. We don't need a model because we have a deen. And any governance and any management system that we develop or that we adopt is going to reflect our deen in accordance, as I say, with the prevailing circumstances and conditions, organically, naturally. Because civilization for us is not artifice. You know, a good demonstration of the difference here can actually be seen in this recent social experiment that they did online. There was a woman who was going around calling churches and calling mosques, asking for help with baby formula. So she would say that she's a single mother with an infant baby and that she ran out of baby formula, and for whatever reason she has no way to buy any. Okay? Almost all the churches that she called said that they couldn't help. They said, we're not a food bank. Or they say, they'd ask her, are you a member of this church? If not, we can't help you, and so on. Okay? So she calls the mosques. And of course, immediately the Muslims just say, well, what kind do you need? Where are you? If we can't find the formula, can we just give you cash? Okay? So the church response was not a moral response. It was an institutional response. You understand? The response of an edifice, a structure that is supposed to represent a moral belief, a religious belief, but it does not operate according to that moral or religious belief. It operates according to institutional logic. But you call a mosque and you get a Muslim response, not a mosque response. Whoever answered that call didn't respond on behalf of the institution. They weren't answering as a representative of the mosque. They answered as an individual Muslim. The money for that formula was going to come out of their pocket. It was going to come out of the pocket of whoever took that call. They wouldn't even let the mosque pay them back for that. You understand? Because they want the reward of helping someone. They want the reward of feeding a little baby. You see the difference? Natural versus unnatural. It's a natural response versus an unnatural response. The mosque doesn't represent our morality or our religious belief. It exists because of the moral and religious people who gather there. The mosque is just a location. It's just a building where Muslim people congregate. And it's the people who make it what it is. And that's the same with our civilization. It is what it is because we are who we are. And whatever institutions or whatever models or whatever structures there are, it's the same way. See, when they got the call, they didn't have to ask anybody what they should do. They didn't have to check the mosque bylaws or what have you. They didn't even ask if she is a Muslim or if she goes to that mosque or anything like that. A hungry baby is a hungry baby. And whoever finds out about it is going to help. If they're Muslim, if they find out about a hungry baby, they're going to help. It's not because it's a mosque. It's because they are Muslim. But not only did the churches not help, some of the pastors even came out with excuses and with rationales for why not helping was the right thing to do. And here you have a perfect example of the West versus civilized people. Their models, their institutions, their structures, and so forth are civilizational camouflage to cover up their complete lack of civilization. And everything after that is just rationalizations and justifications and lies and sleight of hand and trickery and falsehood. This is what I'm telling you. This is why you can never actually engage in honest discourse, in honest discussion with these people. It's impossible about anything because there is no genuine moral foundation. There's only these constructs, these camouflage constructs. And then there is the internal, the real internal, functional primitivity and either immorality or amorality that's operating underneath the camouflage of official civilized values. In other words, there is continuous contradiction between what they do, how they behave, what they believe in reality, and what they claim about themselves. So they always have to find ways to try to validate the claims that they make about themselves to deflect from the invalidity of their real world actions. And that makes honesty impossible. Again, you have to be locked in about this. You need to lock in on this. Always know this. Whenever you interact with them, whenever you listen to them, whenever you engage with anything that they are doing or anything that they are saying, they are always lying. There's literally no way for them to not be dishonest. You just have to try to figure out in what way they're being dishonest. But the fact of their being dishonest isn't even open for discussion. And usually, or you can say almost always, one of the main ways that they are dishonest is in the way they frame things. They set up the whole framework of the discussion in a dishonest manner, in a way to control and in a way to obfuscate, to restrict how any topic or any issue is dealt with, always sort of discreetly banning every other way of dealing with it except for the ways that are in their interests. It's very manipulative. They actually frame things in a way that can sometimes pre-program your own responses without you even realizing it. Like say, for example, the easy one is the way that they attack Islam. When they attack Islam and Muslims, like say, for example, Islam spread by the sword. Okay, so this sets you up to get busy trying to disprove that accusation. Islam means peace. Islam spread by da'wah and spread through trade and so forth. Okay, that's true, but it's not like there weren't any battles, like there was never any fights and so forth. Yes, we fought, and we had reason to fight. And even the way we fought was principled. Even the way we fought was civilized, and it adhered to our rules of combat and warfare that you never had. But they set you up to deny that we had battles just because you are in a position now to try to counter whatever they're saying. See, their whole approach has to have this dialectical, oppositional approach to discussion. Opposite views. They train you for that. So they say this to have you say that. They say right so that they can have you say left. Because if you approach it in a more appropriately complex manner, then they'll make it look like you're equivocating. It's very clever. It's very clever the way they do this. And not only all that, they'll say Islam spread by the sword, and then they get you busy trying to disprove that Islam spread by the sword. Meanwhile, Western so-called civilization spread by the gun, by the bullet, and by the bomb, and by the bayonet, everywhere that they went, even against each other. You understand? They spread their power and they spread their influence through massacres, through obscene, indiscriminate violence, by coercion, right up until today. They're still doing it right now. And they've got you trying to prove your peacefulness literally to the most brutal and the most savage people in history. And they just want that reality to be obscured. This is how they do. They set up a framing in which truth cannot emerge at all. And that framing has become a habit. Everyone gets trained in this. Everyone gets habituated to this manipulative, dysfunctional approach. This combative, oppositional approach. And they literally just make things up too. They just lie. They just fabricate things. And then they want you to address their lies as if they're true. And if you dismiss their lies as fabrications, then they'll make it look like you're just denying. That you're denying something that has not even been proved to be factual. Like, what do you have to say about all these evil, wicked, oppressive things that we claim to be true about you? It's an absolute farce. They not only have no interest in the truth or honest discussion, but in fact, they are deeply invested in truth and honest discussion not ever taking place. So they create this habit of thinking. Again, this sort of, oh, if you're not this, if you're not saying such and such, then you must be saying the opposite of such and such. You understand? And they've completely brainwashed their people with this thinking deficiency, with this handicap. They've inflicted it upon their people. So if you're saying something, for example, positive about X, then you must think that Y is terrible. If you're saying something critical of Y, then you must think that X is perfect. Because again, like I said, they need everyone to fit into boxes, the boxes that they constructed. If you're not a Democrat, then you must be a Republican. If you don't like capitalism, then you must be a communist, right? This is how they do. If you're not this, then you must be that. Always trying to control, always trying to impose, and always trying to coerce and manipulate how the discussion progresses. And they're allergic to complexity. They have inculcated in their population a deep suspicion against complexity. If something cannot be explained in 50 words or less, if it can't fit into this bipolar oppositional framework, if it can't be understood in the simplest possible way within 15 seconds, they get uncomfortable. They're going to have a medical emergency. But you can't dumb down things, most things anyway, you can't dumb things down without becoming functionally dishonest. Most things cannot actually be simplified without becoming misrepresentations of the thing that you're discussing, misrepresentations of reality. I see it from Westerners in my comments all the time. Oh, so what you're saying is, right? They'll do this, they'll play this trick. So basically what you mean is, ... And then this ... it's always followed by a complete misrepresentation of whatever I actually did say. Look, you're never going to rephrase something that I say without distorting it, because I choose my words, alhamdulillah, quite deliberately. So don't ever tell me what you're actually saying is such and such, because whatever I said is what I meant to say, and you're certainly never going to be able to help me articulate my own thoughts. But the fact of the matter is that you don't like what I said and you don't like what I meant. So you just have to try to pretend that I said or that I meant something else, something that will fit into one of your boxes. because you have pre-programmed responses for that in your box, in the box that you're in. You know, because the box that you're in comes with its own script. It comes with its own pre-programmed responses to anything that's in any of the other boxes. And you don't know what to do with any ideas or any opinions or any analyses or any commentary that comes from outside any of your boxes. And actual honesty only ever comes from outside your boxes. No, if you're ever having any sort of a discussion with a Westerner, or if you even listen to their discussions, wallahi, you are entering a house of mirrors. That's how it is. Yes, and that includes their news coverage, that includes their analyses, their commentaries, their op-eds, their theories, their philosophies, their ideologies, their politics. Obviously, it includes their entertainment. It includes everything, and I'm not exaggerating. And listen, this is not me trying to blame them or accuse them or trying to be divisive or what have you. This is just the way it is. And I'm explaining to you or trying to explain to you why it is that way. Rather than understanding civilization as something that is springing or is supposed to spring from and a refining of people's internal qualities, they have always approached civilization as an external construction intended to conceal their internal qualities. Civilization for them is not natural and organic. It's not a natural and organic byproduct or an expression of who people are. Civilization for them is an artificial construct that is supposed to gloss over who a people are. Because fundamentally, they believe that people are animalistic by nature. That's the context of their society. And that context structurally precludes the possibility of honesty. And I mean, you see this blatantly when they talk about, for example, race, racism, or gender, or marriage, or child rearing, or poverty, any social issue at all, crime, pornography, violence, vulgarity and violence in entertainment, you name it. They have never once had an honest discussion about any of these topics. Because the honest truth is, they are racist, they are misogynist, they are unfaithful people, uncommitted people, they see children as a burden, they are criminal, lustful, perverted, violent people. Because again, they have been made to believe that human beings are apex predatory animals. So they are as they are, under the camouflage of their so-called civilization. And they think that being civilized just means maintenance of the camouflage. You understand? So they never will be and they never can be honest about any of this, because that would mean removing the civilizational camouflage and actually facing the reality of their centuries of non-development as a people. Yes, their inferiority as a so-called civilization, as a collective society, as a people, as a nation, with an absolutely atrocious history of violence and savagery that is literally unparalleled in human history. No, lying and deception and obfuscation are and always have been the whole foundation of their identity as Westerners. Saying one thing and doing another thing is exactly what it means to be a Westerner. So like I say, you have to know this. You have to understand this. Muslims need to understand this. People in the global south need to understand this. Anything that comes out of the West, anything that comes out of the West, you need to interrogate that meticulously. And you don't need to try to find out if they're lying. You have to identify how they're lying and about what. There's no question of if. There's no question of if they're lying. And yes, Westerners need to know this too. You need to recognize and acknowledge this too. If you have any sincere desire whatsoever to change and to make a contribution to this world. As I've said many, many times, I am identifying and exposing the dysfunction of Western so-called civilization, and I'm not doing that to try to shame anyone. This is something that has been done to you by your society, by your culture, and it is detrimental to every single individual in that society. And you deserve to be normal people. Yes, you deserve to be capable of honesty and capable of genuine discourse and dialogue. But until that dysfunctional psyche is repaired, you're simply not capable. And you need to realize this. And we need to understand this ourselves, Muslims, and all of the people in the global south need to understand this ourselves about you. Because wallahi, I think that one of the biggest mistakes One of the biggest vulnerabilities that we have had historically is that we have not understood this about you. We have actually tried to deal with you as if you are normal people, as if we're on the same wavelength, as if we operate in the world in the same way, and we do not. We're not on the same wavelength, and we don't operate the same. People who believe in the noble origin of humanity, and people who believe that human beings are beasts, are never going to operate in the world the same way. They're never going to be on the same wavelength. So we have to deal with you as the predatory animals that you believe you are. Understand, this is not us calling you that. This is what you believe about yourselves. And we would be fools to not deal with you accordingly. You understand? Especially after enduring and suffering centuries of you acting exactly like that. And look, it's not that we see you this way. We're Muslims. We believe that you are the children of Adam just like us. You are our brothers and sisters in humanity. And we want you to live up to that noble heritage. That's what we want for you. But you still think that you can learn how to act by watching chimpanzees and watching wolves and predatory animals and so on. So no, we can't afford to deal with you according to the way that we would like you to be. We have to deal with you according to the way you are. And that's on you. No one's going to change you but yourselves. We can't change you. Your civilizational psyche is oppressive to you, and it has made you oppressive to the rest of the world. So yes, we hope you can change for your own sake and for our sake. We hope you can change. But until that change happens, and I mean really happens, because every time that you've ever told us that you've changed, it's always been nothing but a lie. Until you actually change, the best way that we can deal with you is by doing our best to try to not have to deal with you at all. That's the truth. And that includes not dealing with your theories, not dealing with your ideologies and your commentaries and your news coverage and your analyses and so on and so on and so on. You understand? We have to understand, and we do understand, that you are permanently bad faith actors, even if you have convinced yourselves that you're not. And even if you're not trying to be a bad faith actor. The fact is that the cultural context that you emerged from and that you exist in makes it unavoidable. And no one has got the time and no one has got the energy to try to sift through everything that you say in order to try to locate the truth from the narrative. It's like trying to build a snowman in an avalanche. I'm telling you all this. Firstly, I'm talking to my own people, to the Muslims, and to the people of the global South, to the global majority, to understand how we need to approach the West and how we need to approach Westerners. And I'm telling Westerners themselves so that they can hopefully recognize and hopefully understand the damage that has been done to them psychologically, intellectually, and developmentally, to try to help you liberate yourselves from that and to try to improve yourselves. Look, the time is coming very soon. It's coming very soon. In fact, it's already started. When our parts of the world in the global South are going to start seeing Westerners coming to our shores basically as refugees trying to escape the West as it deteriorates. And you, meaning Westerners, are going to have to urgently recalibrate your psyches in order for you to get up to speed with the rest of humanity, with the rest of the human family, wherever you go, wherever you land. Because no one has time to deal with your nonsense. And for our own people, again, we have to know who we're dealing with. You understand? We have to know who we're dealing with. We have to know what we're dealing with when we let you into our countries. Look, psychological decolonization isn't actually just about trying to rid yourself from the belief that the West is superior and your nation and your people is inferior. No, you have to recognize the reality that the West is civilizationally inferior, civilizationally dysfunctional, foolish, unserious, primitive, and confused. Well, it's an insult to your own society to try to call yourselves equal to the West. You understand? I know you think that that's an empowering statement. We're just as good as the West. But no, that's not true. You're better. The West is no good. You want to be as good as no good? No. Trying to be equal to the West is self-sabotage. Trying to be equal to the West is degrading to yourself. You need to understand this, and Westerners need to understand this. Look, all the humility has been on the wrong side of the equation, and that has been detrimental to both parties. You understand me? You've got people thinking that they need to change who don't need to change, and you've got people thinking that they don't need to change who desperately do need to change. Truth and honesty has been biting its tongue to try to allow falsehood to speak for far too long. Far too long. That's concealment of knowledge. Wallahi, that's a sin. That's a sin. No, Muslims, your civilization is better. It's more refined. It's more sophisticated, it's more intelligent, it's more moral, it's more decent, it makes more sense, it's more natural, it's more ennobling for humanity, and you have got no reason whatsoever to ever be humble about that, or to be quiet about that, or to defer to those who are less accomplished and less developed than you. This isn't about vengeance, this isn't about gloating, this isn't about trying to belittle anyone, it's literally about trying to uplift people. Uplift our own people and uplift the others by actually showing them, by actually identifying for them, teaching them what is better. Because no one is going to improve as long as what is better bows its head and defers to what's worse. No one is going to learn as long as truth defers to falsehood. No one is going to mature as long as the adults in the room give the microphone to the toddlers. And as long as the ones who know act like the ones who don't know are supposed to be their teachers. So this understanding has to factor into the way that you analyze and the way that you engage and the way that you process information. You understand me? You have to know who you're dealing with, and you always have to let them know who they're dealing with.
So everything doesn't seem true, everything doesn't seem right, and the only thing that, it's okay because people do what they want to do, or people do things however they want to do, but at the end of the day, the problem always falls on the people, or it comes to affect the people eventually, because people thinking that this is the way, yet that's not the way. You understand? The white Americans living a life when they think they are this kind of people, yet they're not this kind of people. And many countries also in the world have been affected by the lies or by this system put in place, the white America, because you see, people end up thinking that we only need America for us to survive. Yes, yet we do not really need America to survive. We don't need the white supremacists for us to be able to survive. There are many other things, many other ways people can be able to use to survive. They can be able to use to move on, but now you putting in a position of being the king, it's simply for manipulating other people. So that means you are manipulative. So the white America has always been manipulative to other people, and it's even manipulating even its own people. Not only manipulating not only manipulating manipulating other countries or the world, but it's also manipulating its own people, where people are believing in things that doesn't exist. White Americans are believing on American dream that has never come true, American dream that is never even real. I'm telling you, people talking about an American dream, yet they're suffering, yet their economy is dying, yet they're sleeping angry, yet poverty is becoming a problem in their country, yet they're talking about the American dream. The country, the government has failed. But why are they believing in an American dream? Because there is a system put in place to make sure that these people will not focus. These people will not follow or do what is right. These people will not ask the critical questions. They will always be confused, okay, by what we are doing and all that. And at the end of the day, life will continue. So America has always been tricky. How they explain things, how they do things. They always explain things in a way that they will not clash with the people. And now they are holding people into bondages, because when you are living a life that is a lie or a life that is not true, you're not given an opportunity to ask questions, you're made to think everything is right. It means you are a slave who doesn't know. I used this word and I said, it is very good to be naked and you know that you're naked, than to not to be naked, like you are naked and you don't know you are naked. That is very bad. It's better to be naked and you know that I am naked, but to be naked and you don't know, you don't realize you're naked. You can't be able to help yourself. How can you clothe yourself? You see, but when you know you are naked, you can try to clothe yourself. And that is what is happening in an American land. That is Shahid BOLSEN. He loves explaining things and calling a spade, not a big spoon. Tell me what you think on the comment section. I will do my best to make sure I read all the comments and give a response where possible. This is African Streamline. Until next episode, peace be with you.